honey. Oh, sugar, sugar. You are my candy girl, and you got me wanting you. I just can't believe the loveliness of loving you. I just can't believe it's true. I just can't believe the wonder of this feeling too. I just can't believe it's true. Ah, sugar. Oh, honey, honey. You are my candy girl, and you got me wanting you. Oh, honey. Oh, sugar, sugar. You are my candy girl, and you got me wanting you. When I kissed you, girl, I knew how sweet a kiss could be. I know how sweet a kiss can be. Like the summer sunshine, pour your sweetness over me. Pour your sweetness over me. Oh, sugar. Honey. Pour little sugar on it, baby. Like the sweet. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Pour little sugar on it. Oh, yeah. Pour little sugar on it, honey. Pour little sugar on it, baby. I'm gonna make you like so sweet.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Donald March. I'm president of Mamaroneck's Historical Society. It's said that comic books are an escape, not from truth, but from despair. Indeed, a narrow escape into the fate of tomorrow. Tonight we have a very special presentation for you to kick off our 1992 season. We thought we would begin this with the 50th anniversary of Archie Comics. Archie resides in Mamaroneck. We're very honored and privileged today to have Mr. Michael Silverclight, the chairman of Archie Comic Publications, with us, and a co-publisher. But before we talk to Mr. Silverclight about Archie and his 50-year history, this afternoon, LMC-TV and I took a walking tour through Archie's archives. The Archie's archives that's not open to the general public. And we thought we would share that with you first. And without further ado, let me show you the tape. Can somebody get the lights?
I gave you guys back. I don't know if you got the message. I want the message.
Okay.
Use that pause button, Jim.
Tour of Archie.
Smile, Karen, for the camera. Okay, good. Bye. I just got blind. Heidi.
Again, you make this on the track that for the land giving the sign, which apparently also supposed to. Okay. As far as I know, it's on the unit. Oh yeah. Okay, we trust you. Like I said, I don't think it will matter whether we get a 9 or 5 at the end because it's in here. It's going to run with
You have a sound there?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Donald March. I'm president of Mamaroneck's Historical Society, and we're here today with Paul Castiglia at Archie Comics on Fayette Avenue. We are here today because it's the 50th anniversary of Archie Comics, 1941 to 1991. Our attempt is to show historical, social, and political change over the last 50 years through comic books. Paul, can you tell me any thing that you might be able to reflect on in terms of changes that you've seen of Archie since you've gotten here and have been working with Archie yourself?
Archie has always strived to keep current with the times and with trends. If you look at various comics that were published during specific decades, you can see, for instance, in the 50s, there's a lot of sock hop activity, a lot of hula hoop activity. The 60s gets into the hippie generation, and those types of things are very prevalent in the books. Since I've been working here, we've seen the shift over from skateboards to rollerblades, for instance. And these are things that can happen, within a year's time. And yet we try to keep as current and up to date as possible and keep the teenagers with the times, because after all, our audience is comprised of teenagers. And if we're not up to date with them, then, they're not going to be receptive to us.
Hairstyles, hula hoops, cars with fins, peace chains, all that sounds familiar. I know I've lived through it. And I also remember when Archie comics were a dime. Unfortunately, I wasn't smart enough to keep any of them. Can you tell me what an Archie comic sells for these days?
Well, the prices vary. Because it all depends on when the issue first came out and if there's something significant in the issue. For instance, the first appearance of Archie in Pep Comics number 22, which came out in December of 1941, goes for a few $1,000s now. And throughout the years, if something significant happened, for instance, there was a story where Betty and Veronica sold their souls to the devil. Now that issue is worth a lot more than your average Betty and Veronica issue because of the outlandish subject matter of the story.
What would you say is the most outlandish topic ever tackled by this publication?
Well, that's a very tough question to answer because we've tackled so many different topics that really just about anything has come under the Archie microscope. There were a lot of wacky hippie stories in the 60s. That's probably the most outlandish things. There was a story where Jughead became a punk in the late 70s. In the 60s, in the 50s, actually, if you want to get into outlandishness, the period from about 1958 through 1961, at that time, if you recall, there was a lot of atomic bomb testing, okay, and there was that was a big thing in high schools, duck and cover, the whole thing about the nuclear age, atomic age, and the movies reflected that. There were a lot of Martian movies, a lot of the Japanese horror movies started coming out then, which reflected upon, dinosaurs, giant dinosaurs created by atomic radioactivity. And at that time in the Archie comics, they would meet up with a lot of space creatures and monsters and things, so it sort of fit in with the whole mood of the country.
It's been said that during the 1930s, during the Depression, people found escapism. Archie wasn't around then. We're in the middle of a recession now, a major economic calamity for the nation. Would you say that people are escaping more into comics these days? And does the comic itself reflect the recession in any shape or form? And how has it impacted on Archie?
We find that our audience really identifies with Archie because Archie is pretty much the average middle-income teen. His parents come from middle income, and in such that we have been addressing the recession because we have a particular issue coming out that is going to be all about the recession and how Archie and the gang deal with it. And also, even though we have a rich character like Veronica, that's part of the mythology, even her father is being hit by the recession. So we do approach it and try to get a little dose of reality in there without it being too heavy-handed.
Well, Paul, you've pretty much indicated that Archie is not afraid to deal with major social, political, or historical issues. Archie was born at about the advent of the Second World War. I know that Archie had a good role to play in helping the soldiers cope with the stress and the strain and the blood and the guts all around them during World War II. I know he's played a role in the other major conflicts that this nation's been involved with, right to and up to including Desert Storm. And I kind of would like to include those mentions along the way of this tour that we're going to be taking in a few moments. But is there anything you'd like to share with the audience about Archie during the war years, either World War II, rather, World War II, Korea, even Desert Storm?
Well, specifically, during the early years of Archie, during the 40s, a lot of the stories tied into World War II. For instance, a lot of the stories had to do with the gang raising funds for the war effort, touting war bonds, stressing the importance of purchasing war bonds, and they even had a story once where they dressed Jughead up as Hitler and they put his head through this board, and for 10 cents the kids got to throw baseballs at Hitler's head, and it was all to raise money for the war effort. Bringing it up to modern times, recently we did a story around the time that the troops came home from Desert Storm, where we welcomed home the troops, and we covered it from that angle, welcoming home our heroes.
I guess the last thing I'd like to say before we take the tour is that, as the audience can see, Archie is as current and as up to date as you could ever possibly imagine. It's almost like watching the news in an animated fashion. You just have to be ready to pick up the nuances and read between the lines. There are messages there that reflect the social, historical, and political times that we live in and the times that we've just passed through. And now, if Paul will be willing, I'd like to take a little walk through Archie's archives.
In the late 60s, the Archies became a band. Don Kirshner put the act together, and they called themselves the Archies, and they had a great big hit called Sugar Sugar, which was the top-selling record for 1969. Ironically, the song Sugar Sugar was first offered to the Monkees. When they turned it down, Kirshner got the brainchild to take the popular Archie comic characters and put together a studio group which the characters would embody. Okay, during the 60s, late 60s, and throughout the 1970s, there was a great deal of Archie merchandise available. At the time, we had one of the highest rated Saturday morning TV shows in history on Saturday mornings. The Archie TV show is produced by Filmation. Most of the material you see here is from that time period. The Archie's cutout record, which came from Cereal Box, Archie dolls from Mark's, Archie thermoses from Archie lunch kits, buttons, postcards, and up top you'll see a new item, something which was a recent tie-in with Burger King, where they gave away Archie cars with the Archie characters inside the cars as part of one of their kid meals. Our latest editor at Archie Comics is Darryl Edelman, who has come to us formerly from Marvel Comics, and he has brought about many changes in line with the Archie philosophy of keeping up with the times. An editor is responsible for the overall look and feel of the book, as well as securing the services of the creative talent involved.
Yeah, I have 3 32-page books and one of the digests. I have the Betty and Me book, Jughead, Veronica, and then the Little Archie digest, which are the regular Archie characters as elementary school kids. Some of the changes that I've come up with for Jughead, I gave him a mohawk with darts, made him a thrasher, introduced some new characters, female characters, Sassy Thrasher, Aerobic Liz, and Crystal, the New Age girl, in the Veronica book. Changed the logos, put some banners across the top here. Usually they used to just have gag covers. I've been going more concept covers for Striking Image. Here we did a little Magritte riff, and this is this month's issue of Jughead, Joker cover. Okay, these covers here are examples of the old style covers that they used to do before I started working here. They were mostly, one panel gags, and if you also notice the corner boxes, they were all the same, whether it was Betty and Me or Jughead. And I've changed that so that, here's Betty putting on her lipstick, Jughead on a skateboard, and Veronica vamping for us there. So some of them I still do are gag covers. Like, for instance, here's a sketch from Michael Gallagher. He did 60 issues of Alf, and now he's writing Jughead. He's writing Veronica and Betty and Me, but here's a cover sketch that he sent in. Still a gag cover, but trying to get more of a graphic unity. On and on and on, but by Jughead.
Do you want to shoot? As part of our 50th anniversary celebration, we held a special contest asking readers to send in an anniversary card to Archie and the gang, and the responses we got were overwhelming. Here on this wall you just see a sampling of some of the winners, but you could probably quadruple what you see here, and that's the amount we got. We just got so many responses, it was overwhelming. And as you can see, a lot of the kids have artistic talent. Children who sent in anniversary cards and were winners of the contest. Who has been a part of many of Archie's most historical moments is managing editor Victor Gorelick, who has been with the company for several years.
Well, more like 33 years. I started back in 1958 as an art assistant, replacing one of the artists who was going out freelance. His name was Dexter Taylor, who now draws Little Archie. And I worked in the art department. One of my first jobs was taking cleavages out of Katie Keene's artwork because of we had very tight restrictions in those days in the Code Authority. And I worked my way up from an art assistant to art director and eventually managing editor, which I've been doing for the past 10 years. As managing editor, I'm responsible for all of the material that you see in all of the comics that we produce, and overseeing any other editors that are working for the company. I'm also responsible for all the commercial comic books that we do as well. We do commercial comics for Radio Shack, General Foods. We've done it for Alcoholics Anonymous, the FBI, and quite a number of other books as well. One of the biggest parts of my job is communicating a lot of ideas to the writers and to the artists that work for us. And a lot of the ideas that we get come from our readers themselves, who send in mail to us on a daily basis. We get hundreds of letters in here every week, and the readers are very specific as to what their likes and dislikes are, what their favorite TV shows are, how they feel about fashions, how they feel about life itself, and that's what we try to project into our comics. That's one of the reasons why Archie has remained so popular for the last 50 years. The fact that Archie and his friends have remained contemporary, keeping up with current trends and styles and so forth. Most of the readers that read Archie are pre-high school, and reading about Archie and his friends in Riverdale, it's really a nice place for them to go when they come home all stressed out from being preached to by their teachers and by their parents, and they can go up into their room and read an Archie comic book and feel comfortable with the characters. They can relate to the characters, and they know that when they go into high school, they're hoping that their life may be very much like Archie and his friends.
From a historical perspective, you probably can't do better than the cover of Pep Comics from 1942. This is the first issue where Archie appeared in a comic, and you can see him warding off the hoof print of the hangman. On the heel of the hangman, you can see the Imperial Japanese flag and the German Nazi flag. You can see him gallantly trying to hold off the forces of oppression.
This is the cover of the first comic book which Archie appeared in. This is Pep Comics number 22 from December of 1941. At the time, the company, which was called MLJ Publishing, was publishing superhero comics just like everybody else because that was the popular thing to do. But buried deep within the middle of this comic book was a new and novel idea, a teenage character. This is Archie in all his original glory. As you can see, he looks a little bit younger than we know him now. And you can also see a lot of the Andy Hardy influence in the character. As you'll see over to Archie's right, there's Betty too, making her first appearance in this very same story. And within this story, Jughead as well makes his first appearance. Just as Archie keeps up to date with trends and styles that teenagers are involved in, they also keep up to date with important issues. As you see here, this is a public service announcement that we did, alerting the kids to the dangerous AIDS situation and how getting properly educated can be a solution to the problem. Some examples of how Archie has dealt with serious issues in the past include this comic from 1972, where the gang inadvertently were transporting drugs without their knowledge. Here's a famous story where the services of a Spanish interpreter were needed to help save somebody's life, and the only person who could do the job was Archie because he was learning how to speak Spanish in school. This is a famous comic book where the gang decided they were going to protest the war, say their piece for the equal rights movement, and basically those types of things. And here's one of our ecological issues. Archie has always been concerned with the environment, and even to this day, we do a lot of stories revolving around how you can help save the environment.
In 1988, the village manager of the village of Mamaroneck approached us about a problem they were having with regard to sanitation and drain water being diverted into the sewer system of the city, of the village rather. And with his help, we designed a brochure and a poster and took his character, Inspector Sammy Terry, who was introduced to Archie, and Archie became the spokesperson to teach young people about the overusage of the sewer system, people who had illegal drains hooking up into the sewer system, and problems like that. And posters were put up all over the village and in schools and in churches, and did a lot to show young people and old people alike about the problems of hooking up illegally into the sewer system, which was overtaxed at that time.
And that wraps things up here at Archie Comics. Now back to Don Charles and Michael Silverclay at the studio.
There you have an insider's view of what it's like to be on the inside of Archie Comics and to have a short, brief look at their archives. You can't do better than that except to be there yourself. I fortunately was privileged to do that, and it's my privilege to bring back to you and to the community that which I was able to capture on videotape with the help of LMC-TV and share with you tonight and share with the community through LMC-TV. Least I forget, I promised Mr. Silverclay I would make mention of this wonderful Home of Archie Comics sign. It's not common knowledge in the community that Archie lives here, and this is an attempt by Archie Publications to announce to the community that this is Archie's home. And this will be going up very shortly, and it's making its first public debut here today for all of you to see and for the community to see over cable TV. And with that, I'd like to introduce you this evening to Mr. Michael Silberkleit. Excuse me.
Thank you for inviting me here, and I just want to say hello to all of you. It's really great to see a full house. I want to ask you, start my little talk with a question. How many of you read Archie comics?
Be truthful.
Okay. Now, all of you put your hands down. How many of you read Archie comics? Interesting.
You didn't ask them whether or not they like Betty or Veronica.
No. I'm saving that for later. I also want to clear up one other thing, and that is that Archie does not really live in Mamaroneck. Archie lives in Riverdale. But he doesn't live in Riverdale that we all know in the Bronx. He lives in Riverdale, USA, which is really a small town in the middle of the U.S. someplace that we all envision as a nice, quiet town where young people grow up without bad influences, without all of the things that we see today on television and in the movie theaters and read in the newspapers. It's really exciting to be in this business. I'm the son of one of the founders. My father, Louis Silberkleit, founded the business with my partner's father, John Goldwater. They were publishers of magazines, comic magazines in the 1930s, and in those days, as the video said, the comic heroes were superheroes, and they were fighting the Nazis, and they were fighting the Japanese, and Europe was erupting into war, and there was violence all over, and everybody was getting ready to go off to fight the terrible World War II. And John Goldwater, my dad's partner, felt that there was a need at that time to come up with an everyman type hero. The biggest hero in those days was Superman, and he was a superhero, bullets bounced off of him, and he was invincible, and he felt, John did, that there was need for an everyman type character. And he actually created the idea of Archie. He came up with the idea and the concept. Came to my dad and said, "What do you think?" And my dad looked at it with him and he said, "Wow, this is great, let's try it." And as you saw there, Archie was placed quietly in the pages of Pep Comics number 22 and took off from that period. Some interesting things that I remember as a kid coming into my dad's office was them showing me letters of servicemen who were at war in World War II, and letters written, "Dear Archie, after the battle was over, I was sitting in the bottom of a foxhole." For those of you who don't know what a foxhole is, it's the crater that's made in the ground after a shell explodes. And the soldiers would jump into that hole and be protected from the bullets because they were underground level and they could pop up and shoot, or it was something that they dug with a shovel to protect themselves. And these letters would say things like, "After the battle was over and the smoke cleared, I looked down at the bottom of the foxhole and there I saw an Archie comic. And I picked it up and I read it. And I saw Betty and I saw Veronica, and it just reminded me of home. It reminded me of Mom and Dad and the street where I grew up and the quiet lane or whatever." And this is a true story. I mean, I'm not making this up. I actually saw letters like that. Unfortunately, over the years, they seem to disappear. And it's a shame because something like that would be great for our archives and even for your archives in Mamaroneck. Anyway, I'll give you a little more of the history of Archie since this is a historical society. The idea of the teenage everyman character took off and became more and more popular, and in the 40s or 50s, I forget now, Archie was the 10th largest selling periodical in the world. Number one was, I believe, Life magazine. There was no TV Guide in those days. There was no television. And Archie was number 10. We used to sell over 1 million copies of Archie an issue, and the magazine came out 9 times a year. So we sold 9 million copies of Archie comics every year. Today, we sell upwards of 16 million comics of our entire issues of our copies of our entire line in 1 year. Anyway, with the advent of television in the 50s, comics started declining. And this new medium came into everybody's house, and people would sit there and watch television and watch their favorite shows and stop reading, but Archie continued to be contemporary and to still sell on the newsstands. In the 50s, a psychologist by the name of Frederick Wertheim felt that comics were seducing the young people. Now, there were many excessively violent comics on the newsstands then, and these comics dealt with severed heads and gore and people having their arms chopped off, and they were really very bad. And he wrote a book actually, called Seduction of the Innocent, which is exactly what the title implies, that innocent kids were being seduced by these magazines. And it really almost cast a death knell on the comic industry. It actually was in the 50s, because it also, at the same time, we were experiencing the McCarthy hearings and the un-American things. Everybody was a communist. Communists were hiding under the bed, and they really took off after the comic magazine industry. Fortunately, Archie was there saying, hey, wait a minute. I'm all about growing up in America and good, clean, believable fun and everything. And there were a few other publishers out there like that. Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Bugs Bunny, Casper, the Ghost, and so on. And many of the publishers got together, and we formed the Comics Magazine Association of America. I'm happy and fortunate to be the president of that association, and since I go back so far in the industry, I really get a kick out of going to the meetings and dealing with a lot of the problems that are current today, some of them almost as bad as what they were then. And because of that, we have what's called the Comics Code. All of our magazines of members that belong to the association must carry this seal, this little seal that's on the upper right-hand corner of our magazines. It says approved by the Comics Code Authority. And what it means is that the editorial content of that magazine is deemed acceptable for children. And every single page of every single comic that's published by every member of the association must go past a censorship stage. And from time to time, the editors of the various publishers get together, and they will upgrade the code, make it more contemporary, more relevant. But we are trying to police our own industry, and I think that's admirable for our industry, because there aren't many industries that do things like that deal with young people. The average age of the Archie reader is about 8 to 14. I would say the medium age is about 8 to 10, somewhere in there. 60% of our readers are girls, and of course 40% of our readers are boys. The average age of a lot of comic readers are adults, over 16, over 18. There are now many comic shops. I don't know if you're aware of them, but most communities have comic shops, which are stores that sell the more violent type magazines, the magazines that people buy because the artist or writer who drew or wrote them are considered collectible. People will buy magazines and not even read them, just put them in a plastic bag and put them in a box and put them away, hoping that 5 years from now they'll double in value. Archie has a slight appeal to that market, but our market, as I said, is basically a younger market. We also sell our magazines in supermarkets, at supermarket checkouts. We're the 6th Archie Digest. These magazines are the 6th most profitable magazine at checkout in supermarkets all over the United States and Canada. Number 1 is TV Guide, Reader's Digest, Prevention, Midnight, The Inquirer, The Star, and Archie. And the interesting thing, we've done many surveys about why Archie sells so well at the supermarket, because the kids don't go through the supermarket checkout, but the mothers go through the supermarket checkout. And many times after an engagement like this, mothers or even fathers will come up to me with a little kid in tow and say, Mr. Silverclide, I want to shake your hand. I really want to thank you for a wonderful job you did. Well, I didn't do it. I didn't found Archie, but I said, thank you very much. What did I do? And they say, you taught me how to read. Because at night, when my parents said, go to bed, no more television, no more radio, no more music, go to bed, I would get under the covers with my flashlight and sit there under the covers with my flashlight and read Archie comics. And I learned how to read. And now my little Johnny or Sally or whoever it is, she's learning how to read. And you know what? It's good for her to read this, because I know the ending is going to be good. It's going to be clean reading. It's going to be cute. It's going to be funny. It's going to be contemporary, and they're going to laugh about it. Now, that's great. You know, you can't buy that. and it really makes what we do worthwhile over here on Fenimore, on Fayette Avenue. Another thing I want to tell you about our magazines is that we are very environmentally conscious. We're the only comic magazine publisher today of the maybe 30 to 40 publishers in the business whose magazine is printed on recycled paper. We just started in January to print all of our magazines on recycled paper because we have a commitment to the environment we live in. We did a survey and we found that for every issue of our magazines that we put out, it would, I forget the numbers now, but basically what they were, that the returns, all of these magazines that are not sold are chopped up as, they call them returns, they're chopped up and the paper is disposed of. And we found out that the returns of these magazines would fill 640 or 860, I forget the number, New York City garbage trucks and go into landfill occupying a square footage of so many square feet. And we said, that's ridiculous. Let's get into the recycle business. The trees that would be cut down to make a normal comic book for all of our yearly production would be hundreds and hundreds of acres of trees. Let's go into the recycling business and buy recycled paper. Well, the printers objected, we don't do that, you know, that's not the state of the art. You get these mills coming in and we get them at special price. We said, nothing doing. You want to print our books, you find a printer who can print, a paper supplier who will supply you with recycled paper. And they moaned and groaned, but they found the people and they found the suppliers. And then the paper started to tear and it crinkled because recycled paper is not like newsprint and it makes a little crackly sound, but so what? And slowly but surely, they're coming around and we're getting better and better reproduction, and we're very proud of that. Another thing I want to share with you is the very first issue of Archie, which is in this bound volume. Now, a copy of this magazine, just an original copy of this, unbound, just went on sale in Sotheby's in the city last month, and it was valued to go to a collector. You know, they put a price on every item, and I think it was valued at about $1,500. It actually sold for closer to $5,000. So there is a value in collecting even Archie comics. But in this magazine, which goes back to 1941, you'll see that the pages are all falling apart and so on, which is kind of neat also. But you see that Archie looked more like Howdy Doody or more like a rabbit. You see, I don't know if you can see the two buck teeth in the front, but he really looked kind of funny in those days. But that's the way teenagers were perceived by the artist in those days. And one of the nicest things of walking through the archives in our office is to go into the room where we have all these bound volumes, and we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books like this, which have Archie through the years and all of our many different comic books. And whatever was going on, Paul mentioned it briefly on the television set, whatever was going on in those days that book came out, you're going to see on the pages of Archie comics. If bell-bottom jeans were popular, all of the characters were wearing bell-bottom jeans. If hula hoops were popular, they were wearing hula hoops. Now they're wearing rollerblades. Next year it'll be something else, our characters will be wearing them. And that's kind of fun too, because we can get our hands on the pulse of what's going on and then see it come to life on the pages of a magazine. This is the latest issue of Archie that just came out, and this is our environmental issue. In this issue are 4 stories dealing with the environment, and it's kind of tough. How do you deal with the environment in a funny way? You know, we can preach to you and we can tell you you shouldn't do this or you should do that and you should recycle. Pardon? And that's easy. Anybody can do that. But to write a funny story and still make it educational and believable and funny is a little tougher job. And in one of these stories, we have a compost heap story, and the end result is the worms come out of the compost heap, and Veronica goes crazy over all these worms, and it's just very funny. You have to. I'm not going to tell you the whole story. You're going to have to go to the store and buy it, find out. And then another story, they fill Mr. Lodge's swimming pool with something. They're recycling the oil, and it all ends up in Mr. Lodge's swimming pool, and he has to have a swimming pool painted over. Again, the key word in Archie is believable and good, clean fun, good, clean living. We also address social issues. The first social issue we addressed was the drug problem, and that was quite a few years ago, and we told the kids, plain and simple, we had a picture of Archie, and Archie said, I don't need drugs to play sports well. I don't need drugs to get good grades in school. I don't need drugs to be popular with girls. And there was Archie with the two most beautiful girls in the world on his arm, Veronica and Betty. And he said, I don't need drugs to go out with these girls. You have a choice, say no to drugs. That was great. Private, a free public service message paid for by Archie. We didn't get paid for that, and we didn't preach, but believe me, it worked. It worked so well that the carton manufacturer, this is a flat carton of a small milk carton. You know, the sides fold down. It's a tiny milk carton that's given out in schools. You'll see these on some airplanes. We also have them in quart size, half-gallon size, and what have you. But each one of them has a say no to drugs message from Archie on one of the sides. They only made 1.5 billion, with a B, milk cartons like this all over the United States. We're working on another deal now to make another 2 or 3 billion milk cartons. You know, the production of milk cartons is phenomenal. You know how many are made. These cards, which I think were handed out to you, we manufactured these at our expense for most police stations in the United States. And the cops go around, and when they see a bunch of kids, they go over there, and instead of the kids running from the cops, the kids come over and the policemen hand out these cards. Cards are collectible. They have a cover on the front of one of our magazines, and on the back is that same message: I don't need drugs to be popular, I don't need drugs to do well in school or sports or whatever. And I think it's a good public service, and we get it back in spades because people say, wow, we're going to buy Archie comics, and we're doing our duty to the youth of America. Why did we come to Mamaroneck? That was the easiest. I live in Rye, and just over the border. And for many years, our business was down in the city, since it was founded by my dad and my partner Rich's dad, and they lived in the city. And when we first started working, we lived in Westchester. We would get on the train and take the train down to the city and take the subway down to the office, and it was an hour-and-a-half commute, and it was terrible. And you kind of get used to it, but you never get used really to driving into New York or taking the train into New York if you don't have to. And one day, about 8 or 9 years ago, we had a warehouse in Lower New York in Soho where we used to keep our old magazines. And it was in a great building. In fact, it was one of the unfortunate real estate ventures. I'm not in the real estate business, but this building was up for sale, and it was up for sale for a very small amount of money, and I could have bought it at the time by going to the bank and borrowing the money and hawking some things I had. And that building was sold and is now a 6-story condominium apartment off of Canal Street, you know, and went for about $4 million or whatever the price is. But at any rate, we lost our lease in the warehouse. And one day I was driving to come home, and I got off the 95 at Fenimore Road exit and turned right. And as I was driving down the street, a sign caught my eye, and it said, warehouse space, call remodeling consultants. That's our landlord. Called the number, went over there, and found very nice warehouse space in the building that we now occupy. And while I was looking at the warehouse space, I heard banging going on upstairs. And I went upstairs, and they were building offices for somebody, and apparently the guy defaulted on his lease or something happened. And I spoke to Mr. Zachariah, who owned remodeling consultants then, and I said, what's the deal? And he told me. I called up my partner, who lived in White Plains, and I said, you know, that's it. No more commuting. We're moving to Mamaroneck. And within a week, we had a deal worked out and signed a lease, and that's why we're here. And even though I live in Rye, I spend a lot of time in Mamaroneck, shop in Mamaroneck. I also shop in Rye, but I spend a lot of time in Mamaroneck Harbor since I'm a boater. And we're very happy in Mamaroneck. We're very honored that they're going to let us put this up at the end of our street. A few months ago, the United States Post Office honored us, and the post office in Mamaroneck, honored us with a cancellation stamp for one day celebrating Archie's 50th birthday. And we all went down to the post office, and they took the first letter that somebody mailed, and they stamped it, Mamaroneck, home of Archie, or whatever it said. We took that letter, and we sent it to the president with a letter from Archie. That's something I can do, owning Archie Comics. I can write a letter to anybody and sign it Archie. And I can say, gee, gosh, golly, Mr. President, you don't know how Veronica and I and Betty are so excited that you chose to honor us with this cancellation. Well, about 2 weeks later, I got a call from the White House gift shop. And a woman gets on the phone and she says, I want to speak to the owner. And I said, okay, what can I do for you? She says, the president wants to know how much that's worth. I said, what are you talking about? She said, he got an autographed picture of Archie, and it's hanging on the wall in the gift shop, and they want to know how much it's worth, because apparently every time you send a gift to the President of the United States, a value has to be put on it. And all of these dollars are added up somehow, and I guess when he leaves office and he has to pay his income tax and he's now a private citizen, maybe he takes all of this off as a deduction and doesn't have to pay any income tax for the next years of his life. But whatever it is, it was kind of cute because the president called us up. I'll tell you another funny thing that just happened last week. Well, I hope you're aware of it. Archie is a newspaper strip syndicated in many, many newspapers throughout the United States and all over the world, actually. And we're in the Westchester Gannett papers as a Sunday strip. And I got a call the other day from a woman. Archie was the first artist of Archie for the newspaper strip, and the first artist who drew it in the comics was a fellow named Bob Montana. And Bob was really the guy who created the likeness, the comic likeness of Archie. And he was a fantastic man. Unfortunately, he died at an early age in a skiing accident. But a woman called me, and she sounded rather old. And I said, who is this? And she said, my name is Ruth Harding, and I'm calling you from Kennebunkport, Maine. And the name clicked in my memory cells. And I said, wait a minute, I know you. Didn't you have something to do with the Archie strip? And she said, yeah. She said, when Bob Montana used to draw Archie in the 40s and 50s and 60s, I was his assistant. And I'm up here in Kennebunkport, Maine, and I have some old artwork of Archie that Bob sketched, some original pencil sketches, which are very valuable. And she said, I'd like to share them with you. And I said, wait a minute, Kennebunkport, Maine? There's somebody else I know lives up in Kennebunkport, Maine. She says, you mean George and Barbara? I said, yeah. And she has a very down east accent. She says, George and I went to school. Now she sounds like she's from down south, but George and I went to high school together. And George comes over here every time he comes up here, and he's the greatest Archie fan in the world. So I guess maybe we're making we're having some effect on George Bush. But it's just a funny thing to share, and you know, I'm going to send him a letter and try to get him to acknowledge Archie a little bit. Some of the other things we do, and something was just glossed over again on the television, of course you can't remember everything, but we have a custom comic division. And we enjoy making custom comics for anybody who has a need to do something in the comic format. Some of the things we did were, we do comics for the Kool-Aid Company, Kool-Aid division of General Foods. We do all the Radio Shack, the Tandy Corporation, all the books that they give out in their Radio Shack stores. They give these out to schools for free. We do millions and millions of these. And what they are is they're a history of electronics, a history of the computer. They're books written to teach kids how to use computers. And of course they have a commercial motive in that they hope the kid will go buy a Tandy computer, a Radio Shack computer. But we do these for them. We do ham radio books on how to be ham radios. And one day I was invited to a meeting of the FBI up at Camp Smith in West Point. They invited some of the CEOs of corporations in the New York area. Malcolm Forbes was there, and the guys from Sony were there, and they all came in their helicopters. And they all came up there to rub shoulders with the FBI and shoot all their latest weapons and hear all about what's going on in law enforcement. And there were two speakers. One was Rudolph Giuliani, who was the Attorney General, no, he wasn't. He was the Attorney General, I think, of the U.S. Attorney, and very much anti-drugs. And another fellow was Vernon Walters, who was the then U.S. representative to the United Nations. And both these men got up and gave stirring speeches about the drug problem in this country, and how bad it is, and how kids are being affected by it, and how they can't stop the drugs from coming in all over the world, from Colombia and all the things that we read about in the paper. And I said to myself, you know, there's got to be a niche here. There's got to be a hook. There's got to be something for Archie here. After it was over, and it was very informal, I went up to Rudolph Giuliani and I said, Mr. Giuliani, I've got an idea for you. I said, why don't you make Archie a spokesperson to the kids, because they're so impressionable to Archie, and have Archie do a comic book for the U.S. government to tell the kids how bad drugs are for them. And it took me 1.5 years to get that done, but I did it. I got the money, I got a grant from the government, I got a grant from somebody else, because the government isn't going to pay for things like this. And we ended up doing a book on peer counseling for the U.S. government, for the FBI actually, that's being distributed all over the United States. And unfortunately I didn't bring a copy with me, but I can get you a copy to put into the archives. And it's something we're really proud of because it has the stamp of the United States on it. And it's telling kids that drugs are bad for them, and, you know, you do have a choice. And it's great. Some of the other things we do is we sell under license Archie romantic novels. You've probably heard of Sweet Valley High and what are some of the other... Karen, do you remember? My secretary and assistant Karen is in the audience, as is my wife Nancy and Larry, our computer programmer. Anyway, these are very successful, these novels. After kids are old enough to read, or when kids stop reading comic books and want to get on to reading other material, they like reading romantic novels, particularly girls. So we have stories about a new girl comes to Riverdale and Veronica or Betty gets very jealous and Archie falls in love with this girl, and nothing more happens than maybe they hold hands or they get a little sweaty and maybe they'll kiss when nobody's looking. But they're great because, you know, they teach about growing up and what it's like to become an adult and so on. And they're doing quite well. Archie's also printed in about 7 or 8 different foreign languages. 7. Thank you, Karen. We're meeting with some Swedish publishers on Friday because the toy fair is going on in New York and people are coming here to look for licenses. We're printed in Greek, we're printed in Korean, we're printed in French. I brought a French copy here. We're printed in Spanish all through Central and South America, Mexico. What else do I have here? I'm almost finished. Yeah, these are some of the... you saw Darryl speak on there, and he talked about buying Jughead. These are some of the covers that he created, and I think they really are innovative. You know, they are different. This one in black is really, this is a drastic change in comic book covers, and it did sell quite well. We also are lucky to be the licensee of this property. Any of you here are the Teenage Turtles? It's one of the greatest phenomena in licensing in the world. And when nobody knew of this property, the fellow who was a licensing agent, a guy named Mark Friedman, called me one day, and he said, I'm the licensing agent for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I said, the Teenage Ninja Mutant who? And he said, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And he said, I'll be honest with you, I went to some of the other publishers and everybody threw me out of their office. What do you think about this? I said, let me look at it. He sent it to me and I said, well, okay, we'll give it a shot. This is the best comic book we ever published in 50 years, I'm sorry to say, but it still is profitable. We're coming out with a new comic right now called Zen Intergalactic Ninja. Now this is another ninja character that Mark, the fellow who is the licensing agent for this, brought to us. What he does is he's a intergalactic ninja, but the whole gist of the stories has to do with the environment, saving the Earth, saving the world from destruction by these evil characters that come from out of space. And I think with all the environmental issues that are going on today, I think the young people are going to want to read this because it's a hot topic. It's on everybody's minds. I also brought with me 2 books which I will give you to put in the archives. This is Archie Americana series, which is the 40s, all the Archie comics of the 40s, the best stories put into a bound volume with a little history. This is a book that is a licensed book, which is about 50 years of Archie. Again, it has the best stories in there and a little bit of the history, and it's really quite a nice thing to have on a coffee table and so on. Here I have stamps. These are real postage stamps from the countries of Barbuda, Antigua. These are countries in the Caribbean. And this is actually worth 10 Antiguan or Barbudian cents. And if you live in Antigua or Barbuda, you can send a letter to Archie. And this stamp is a real stamp. And there are pictures of Archie, Betty, and Veronica, and all the characters. This is kind of nice.
Maybe hold it up to the camera.
Oh, yeah. The stamps are going to fall off. They're not stuck on there too well.
You mean Barbados?
No, Barbuda. There is a country called Barbuda in the Caribbean. It's right next to Antigua. Antigua.
First traffic light, make a right.
Yeah. Actually, it's Antigua, but there is a country called Barbuda. I guess it's an island. And lastly, I will leave you this, which is a lithograph of one of our earlier drawings of the 3 on the straw. This seems to be the trademark and the symbol of Archie. What you have here is Betty and Veronica and Archie. Now, Betty is sitting here going gaga over Archie. Archie's sitting here going gaga over Veronica. And Veronica is sitting here in love with herself. As you can see, her eyes are looking down and inward. And this is kind of nice, and this is a lithograph. I think the cost is about $75, $80 or something like that, and we would love to donate this to your archives as well, as you know, from one of the companies in Mamaroneck.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, I think that's about it. I'm kind of wound down, although I could talk for many more hours about Archie, because that's all I do. Thank you. And I want to thank you all for listening attentively, and I also want to take the opportunity to welcome any and all of you to come over to our office on Fayette Avenue. Just give us a call first. We do have tours. We love to have young kids come over. We can't handle more than 20 at a time, and 20 even is a little too much, but what we do is we bring them in and we show them how we make comic books, and we give them a little chalk talk on the stories and the pencil drawings and the ink drawings and the colorings, and we show them some cartoons, and we even ask them some questions for our in-house survey. We do a focus group, and we ask the kids what they like to read, and we take very, very good attention to what they say, and what they tell us they want to read will be in the comics 3 or 4 months later. So again, thank you.
We want to, of course, thank you for an absolutely wonderful history of the last 50 years, and showing almost in a skipstone fashion how history, social change, and political change that you and I lived through and are still part of are reflected in comic books. Maybe those teachers that took them away from us when we were younger weren't as honed in on the historical, political, or social messages that were reflected in the nature of the times. Comic books basically are written for young people. Young people have a great deal of difficulty struggling with history, and teachers trying to make history relevant for young people. Local history is part of the 4th grade curriculum, and it's reflected again in some aspects in the 7th grade curriculum underneath New York State mandates. School basically teaches you civic pride, and it teaches you a responsibility to give back something to your community. I don't think that can be exemplified any better than an organization called the Mamaroneck Key Club. And it's based in the Mamaroneck High School. Its faculty advisor is with us this evening, Mr. Mike Sedano. And our vice president of the Mamaroneck Historical Society also happens to be an advisor to the Key Club, Mr. John Quadrini. And tonight we're going to do something rather different. It's been said that members of the Historical Society are usually old and gray, and I was hoping that I shattered that myth a long time ago, but I promised the community that I would leave the Mamaroneck Historical Society a lot less gray at the temples when it came time for me to move on. Tonight I would like to induct the youngest members of the Mamaroneck Historical Society, and they are coming to us as out of the Mamaroneck Key Club based in Mamaroneck's high school. And rather than me inducting them, I would simply ask Mr. Silberkleid to be the inductee of these individuals. But before we do that, Mr. Sedano, I would appreciate if you would step forward and accept this certificate of membership from the Mamaroneck Historical Society to the Mamaroneck Key Club. For the calendar year 1992. One is, of course, for your Key Club room for all Key Clubbers, and one is meant to arrive somewhere in the general office or someplace and prominently displayed in the school for the rest of the school community to see. And it is, of course, signed by myself and the treasurer of the society, and we want to welcome your participation and their participation in saving local history for generations yet to come. Mr. Sedano, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And now the fun shall begin. Mr. Silberkleid, if you could induct these individuals one by one into the Mamaroneck Historical Society. We would appreciate it if you're here and you hear your name, to please come up and accept your membership card for the calendar year 1992.
Yvette Pasqua. Oh,
Yvette?
here you are, Yvette.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Jay Delco.
Jay, welcome.
Congratulations. Terry Guzetta.
Terry, welcome.
Terry, congratulations. Nicole Bissell-Chiatti. I'm in the publishing business. Congratulations, Nicole. Oh, they're getting tougher. Kerry DiRaimundo.
Very good.
DiRaimundo.
Terry?
Kara, not Kerry, Kara. Congratulations.
Kira,
Kira,
okay.
I'm sorry. I'm not in the publishing business. Jill Fisher.
Joe, welcome.
Welcome. Congratulations. Tracy Pizzarello, TR. Does that stand for treasurer? Or
Treasurer.
Treasurer.
Welcome.
Tracy, congratulations. Sandy Abram, secretary.
Sandy. Sandy, welcome.
Sandy, congratulations. Anthony Vitti, vice president.
Anthony, welcome.
Congratulations. And last but not least, the president, Angela Cangiano. Did I say that right?
Sure.
Congratulations.
Angela, welcome. That is something that I've longed to do for the last 3 years since I've taken office as Mamaroneck Historical Society president. I've always wanted to bring the young people of Mamaroneck into the society. I sincerely hope it's a start, and I sincerely hope to use your organization to get the message out of Mamaroneck's local history to the young people. History is a wonderful process. It has to be passed on. In a matter of speaking, I have just passed on the Mamaroneck Olympic historical torch to you. Hopefully, some of you will pick that up and carry it forth. Now, I would like to ask if there's any member of the audience that would like to ask Mr. Silverkleit any questions.
Sure. I'm sorry.
It's okay, go ahead.
In all of this history, you have not mentioned at all the artistic aspect of it. I take it that, like on Walt Disney, it's a lot of history, a lot of people. But any other artists that really stand out?
Oh, yes, I did leave that out, I'm sorry. In fact, our premier artist
is a fellow named Dan DiCarlo who lives in Westchester and Scarsdale. The artists and writers who work for our company are all freelance artists, and they live all over the country. Some of them all over the world, because we do use foreign artists as well. And they all stay at home in their studios and send their artwork into us. And that's one of the interesting things that you have to do in a business like ours, is you have to plan on succession, because nobody lives forever. And we're constantly bringing new artists and writers and inkers and letterers into our company and training them, letting the masters train them. Dan, who's getting on in years, actually has a monthly training session with young artists where he'll sit there and show them how to draw Archie. But their styles are all unique, but they all can end up drawing Archie that maybe only a few of us know the difference. But you know, there's something different about each one of them that we spot, but the average person outside doesn't know the difference usually. Yes, in the back row.
I haven't read an Archie comic for quite a long time, but I used to enjoy them very much. I was wondering how, if at all, has the role of the women changed in the comics over the years, Betty and Veronica?
Well, that's a good question. I said before we're contemporary, and one of the things that we don't do is stereotype anybody. And the women are just as capable and competent and involved in everything as they are in real life to the male characters. There's no difference. They're pals. It's really Archie and his pals. Of course, there's a romantic involvement. I think one of the secrets of Archie is the romantic love triangle, of which girl is Archie going to get, or which Archie is one of the girls going to get. You know, we look at it either way. So we certainly don't, I mean, you could not, I don't think we really ever, if somebody's always going to do it, but you know, nobody really believes that Archie is a sexist magazine. It just never works that way.
But I meant more in terms of do the girls have more careers, if you kind of any kind of discussion of anything different?
Oh, yes, yes. Yes, they certainly do have careers. There is discussion. I mean, the stories are so relevant that if something popular is going on in the country at that time about education or careers or going to college or whatever it is, something like that will always appear in our stories. Yes. Sorry.
Some comics like Batman and Popeye and Dick Tracy have been made into feature films. Has there been any discussion or consideration of trying to make a feature film?
Yes, yes.
Of Archie? Where's that stand?
The Archie property has been optioned to Warner Brothers to make a film. And we were very close to a deal. The movie industry, as some of you may know by reading the papers and the magazines like Variety or magazines like People, is a very strange business. You know, they're very driven to making a lot of money and paying big salaries to the artists. And there have been a lot of flops lately. A lot of people invested a lot of money in a movie and it hasn't worked. You know, not all of them are box office successes. Archie was optioned by Warner Brothers. They had written some scripts. In fact, they even had Nora Ephron write a script. And that was a bit of a disappointment, which I can share with you briefly. Nora Ephron, if any of you know who she is, or don't know who she is one of the best writers in Hollywood. She wrote the movie Harry Met Sally, which was one of the box office smashes. And she's a very funny woman, and she writes with her sister Delia Ephron. And after having somebody else write the script for Archie, which was rejected by the studios, they finally hired Nora to write the script. And we met with Nora, and we gave her a lot of ideas. And she wrote a script which was not as good as we liked it, as we would have liked it, but also, for some reason, Warner Brothers didn't like it. That doesn't mean she's not a good writer. She's an excellent writer. But somehow it didn't work right. And so they paid her for her services because they had to pay her anyway. And no hard feelings. But now they have to find another writer. This can take years. Because at the same time Warner Brothers is doing that, they're making another Batman, and they're making something else, and they're doing something else, and the moods change, and their surveys tell them maybe Archie wouldn't do well this year. It has to be next year. But when Warner Brothers' option is up, we've got somebody else in the wings who's ready to talk to us. There will be an Archie movie. Hopefully it'll be within our lifetime. But no, there will be a movie within the next few years.
Thinking about putting this deal together, had they got as far as thinking of casting Archie and Veronica?
Yes, there was talk that I believe it was Corey Haim was going to play Archie. He was one of the fellas from Lost Boys, that movie about the young vampires. And there was a director that they found who wanted to do Archie in the worst way, a fellow named Joel Schumacher. He did the movie St. Elmo's Fire, and he did the movie it just went out of my head, his most famous movie. He did Lost Boys, the one about the vampire. He did Cousins. He did Flatliners with Julia Roberts and Kiefer Sutherland. And so there was another very, very, very good movie he did within the last few years. And that's it?
Yeah. We've just about run out of time, and it'll make for a messy editing job if we go too much over. I want to thank Mr. Silberkleit from the bottom of the Historical Society's archives.
You're welcome.
For your inclusion in Mamaronec's history. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming and becoming part of the Historical Society. It's your history. Please help us preserve it. If you're not already a member, please become one. Thank you, and good night.
And again, please come and visit us. We'd love to share some more with
This is what we've given out. One of these, and one of these to each guest. You're welcome. Thanks for coming.